Hello, viewers. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I am here today for a very first special episode of this new series of podcasts. And this is what I'm going to do with all of my guests. I want them to tell their name and pronounce it the correct way, because lots of my guests will be international and we all come from somewhere else. I want to hear it spelled nice and clear from my guest, the same way his mom would say his name is in his native country. Please welcome.
Hey, my name is FERENC NEMETH, and even though this is not how my mom would call me, because my mom would call me on my nickname, which as a kid she would call me Ferika. But nobody, my family calls me that, and this is only I call my son Ferika, by the way. But anyway, thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to this podcast interview.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, I'm your host, Sergio Bellotti, here in Boston. We'll get to that later on why is he in Boston, what was he doing, but I'd like to address the yesterday, today, and tomorrow by really digging in the past. So, where were you born? Tell us about your country, and maybe how was it to be born where you were born?
Yes. So, I'm originally from Hungary, and the interesting thing is that I'm actually from a small village of Hungary. It's called Zalacsony, which has 1,000 people. And growing up, I did not know anything about jazz or did not listen to the jazz, but I'm coming from a musical family. My father played drums, my uncle played piano, my cousins play piano, my sister played piano, the other played guitar, my brother played drums, my mom, she was teaching music in school, primary school. Her parents, grandparents, everybody played some instruments. So I studied.
That's already 1,000 people, right?
Yeah, exactly,
Everybody
right
was
there.
a
I
musician.
mean, my small family is a big family, so it's awesome. So I studied Hungarian folk music. I was always in the music, and my father used to play at weddings, so I would go with him and play all kind of music on the weddings. And so I have the earliest photo that I played drums was 3 years old. I was playing on a wedding with my father. I mean, he was a drummer, so we were switching back and forth. But I always knew that I wanted to be a drummer. I just didn't know I was gonna play jazz. So throughout my childhood, I played all kinds of top 40 dance music for people. I played classical music. I played in an orchestra, studied classical music. I played Metallica, Guns N' Roses, all kind of rock, anything that I could touch, I would do. But when I was about 15, 16, I started to understand that I need a little bit more freedom. And so about the age of 16, somebody gave me a cassette tape of Miles Davis, 1964, that Four and More, that live album. And when I heard that, I said, wow, I have no idea what's that, but this is super exciting, and this is what I want to do.
That's the album where the ballads are at 300 BPM.
Yeah, right. Da, 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 da.
I remember that album. That was the answer that John Ramsey gave me when I asked him, how do I improve my up-tempo playing? He gave me that album. He said, play along to that, come next week. And my arm was about to fall off after the first 16 bars. But great story. So, but when did formal education start? So you obviously, being in a musical family, you were learning from everyone, but were you in some specific music programs at an early age?
Yes. So at age 8, I started to study classical percussion.
Okay.
So I studied classical percussion, and at 13, I picked up the piano and marimba, slowly. And at age 14, I went to a special high school that actually today was our 30th anniversary reunification for the graduation of high school. I was talking earlier to my friends.
Wow.
And so what happened is, in this high school, every year they would pick 2, 3, maximum 4 person each instrument. So I was lucky to be the 4th person in that list. And I say 4th because when I went to high school, definitely I was the worst as far as qualifications. I had some incredible percussion player classmates. You know, the other 3 guys, they were all better than me, no doubt. But that really made me practice 8 to 10 hours a day. And that made me really be like focused that wow, this is the level. So the environment is super important.
Right.
And they make you be musical. And so I was doing like ear training every day, Monday through Friday, 5 times. You know, I was talking to my solfege teacher today, and she was like, you are always the example. Like, I was like almost failing in ear training. And by the time I got to college, I developed my ears that I never had to study. Like, I always test out all my exams. And so anyway, for me, the environment was always super important. Same thing when I moved to Berklee, the level was so high. You know, Kendrick Scott, Charles Hayes was still here. John Lamkin was playing at Wally's.
He was my roommate.
Adam Deutsch. Oh, there you go.
John Lamkin, the 2 lefty drummers in one house.
Yeah, imagine. Wow, amazing,
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
And D'Anthony Parks. So when I
Sure.
saw these guys, I was like, wow, that's the next level. I went to the practice room and boom, just, you know.
Incredible. Since you spoke about your training outside of the percussion only world, but dealing with pitches and piano, if you would tell a young player now, an up and coming musician, how important it is, how much has impacted you in your career being a well-rounded musician and knowing your harmony and knowing your piano and music outside of the rhythm family?
Yeah, so 100%. There are difference between being a drummer, being a musician. And if you want to be a musician who happens to play drums, then you really have to develop your ears. And that, especially if we are talking about jazz, okay? Other genres is not that important because you can be like, okay, it's a 32 bar form, it's a blues, kind of you get it. But in jazz, like, the nuances and things are happening so fast, so quickly, and if you don't hear it, there's no chance. Like, all the drummers, the greatest drummers like Jack DeJohnette, or like plays incredible piano, amazing ears, like every drummer that I ever met, and they are really great, they have really great ears. So at least 50%. 50% is the drums, and 50% is constantly, until today, I'm always training my ears, transcribing, listening, like, just like doing some, I have some apps, doing some intervallic training, like I'm constantly doing that. And that is going to be the difference between someone who is really good or someone who is just busy all the time playing with great musicians, because those musicians, they can hear if you hear.
Yeah. Now, Boston is about 1 million people. Were you coming directly from the 1,000 people village to Boston, or there was something in between?
There was a little bit of a transition. So for high school, in my village, there was no high school. In my village, there wasn't even a primary school. I had to go to another village. But for high school, I had to go to a city that had about 180,000 people. So that was a little bit bigger. That was 4 hours away. So I was, at 14 years old, I moved out from my family. I was living in a dormitory.
We're talking about Hungary for those who maybe missed it in the beginning of the, it's Eastern Europe, correct?
Yes.
Eastern Europe. How big is the country?
So the country is 93,000 square kilometers. Well, it's about 10 million people.
Okay, 10 million people. So Italy, my country, is 60.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a size, a proportion with it.
Yeah.
Is there a state in the United States of America that compares? For example, I know Italy is about the size of California.
Yeah, I would say Hungary is about maybe proportional, like if Italy has 60 million, Hungary has 10 million, not just because of the population, but because of the size also, could be like, you know, a fifth of Italy.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
it's like
Great.
the northern part, like maybe northeastern part of Italy.
Yeah.
This is not, well, just think about like this. 500 kilometers wide, which is like 300 miles,
Yeah.
and about 180 kilometer like this. So Hungary looks like this. 180 kilometer, which is about
100 miles.
110 miles.
Okay.
So 300 by 110. You know?
Yeah. So you can drive it in a day.
Yeah. Oh, I used to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to go from one side to another in like 5 hours. You know.
Interesting. And so you moved to the bigger city
I moved to the bigger city.
for the public school system, right? And
then I moved to Budapest actually for my.
which is the capital.
It's the capital, and I studied 4 years. I went to college there, which really helped me. They just started that year when I moved there to have the Franz Liszt Academy adopted a jazz department. So I actually got my first bachelor in Hungary from the Franz Liszt Academy from the jazz department.
Okay.
And Budapest at that time was about maybe something like close to Boston, like 1 million, maybe over 1 million, I think.
I assume you were playing jazz, not just studying jazz.
So,
was
yeah.
there a scene?
So yeah, in Budapest there was really a great scene. There are some amazing, for example, Laszlo Gardoni
Sure.
is from Hungary, right? Teaching here at Berklee.
Teaches at Berklee. We'll get him on the show
Yeah.
real soon.
And then there were some guys like Sakchi he is not with us anymore, but an incredible piano player that played with a lot of people, with Jack DeJohn. I played with a lot of really known musicians. He used to live in New York for a while. And then there is a saxophone player, Tony Lakatos, that is really, really great. And then a couple, Kalman Ola is another amazing, like we have a really good piano tradition. And then Tsumo Arpad, who was at the Monk Institute after me, he was already on the scene, a few years younger than me. Daniel Sabo, that I ended up recording an album with him, with Chris Potter, you know. So there were some really good musicians. And in fact, I was playing with a band, a fusion band, and the reason I came to Berklee, because these guys, they were older than me, about 20 years older, they invited Dave Samuels to play with us to record my first album I ever recorded. I recorded with Dave Samuels. So we recorded that album with those guys, very professional fusion players, you know. And so there was like a pretty good scene. But by the end of the 4th year, and by the way, my teacher, my jazz drum teacher, Imre Kőszegi, was also a very, very good one. Used to live in Germany, played with many of the great American musicians who came to Germany in the 70s, for example. So it was pretty good. It was obviously nothing is, in my view, as good as here in the States. Like I always find that the best jazz musicians are here in the States. But there are some good ones in Europe, and compared to the country, compared to everything, there was a good scene.
Right.
Yeah.
Jazz was born in America, so that's probably
Yeah, I
why
mean,
coming to the motherland. Let's talk about you coming to the motherland. So you meet Dave Samuels there. Dave Samuels was teaching actually in the percussion department, I believe, also in the ensemble department.
Yeah.
May he rest in peace. What a great player he was.
Yeah.
And I believe he was either the founder or co-founder or in the early Spirogyra.
Yeah. So he was very early on. I don't know if he was founder, but very early on, he was in the band. And it's actually an interesting story.
Great mallet player, amazing musician.
So Dave, he was we became very close friends, and I spent Christmas there in a house. I knew the kid and everything, his daughter, and so the reason actually he got to Spirogyra because his wife knew, I'm not sure who, I forget who it was that she knew, and she introduced Dave to the guys, inspire each other, and then Dave started to play there. But yeah, so Dave came to Hungary, we played, we did a tour, we recorded, and he really liked my playing. And he said...
Was he already teaching at Berklee at the time,
Yes.
Dave Samuel? So that's the link
Yeah.
for you to come to the
That's the
States.
link. So he told me that when I finished school, which was another 3 years before I finished, but he said I should definitely apply and come to Berklee. And he said, I'm teaching there, blah, blah, blah. So I did that. When I finished college, you know, that was also a great thing to look forward, you know, like, oh, wow, this guy from, you know, America, he told me that I'm good and I should apply. You know, that gives you hope. It's very important. And so I did an application. I went to a Berklee scholarship tour where there was an audition in Paris.
That's where I auditioned.
That's what you did?
In '93 at the American School of Music.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Right on.
Same thing. John was there, Ramsey, in my audition.
You know, when I did it, it was Gary Burton and another gentleman. I forgot his name now, but luckily I didn't know that Gary Burton was trading fours with me. He sat at the piano, and because I knew him by name and by fame, and I was already nervous. You know,
Of course, yeah.
nervous we are on those things. But after at the interview, they said, "By the way, you just traded four with Gary Burton." Traded fours with Gary Burton. So, yeah, Marian, that brings back memories. Cool.
Yeah.
So I assume success story, right? You got a scholarship.
I did. Yeah, I got a scholarship. At that time, by the way, '98, Berklee was $7,000, and I got $5,000 for the first semester. So that allowed me to come here because there's no way I could have come, and so that was really an awesome thing. And then from then on, each semester I applied for more scholarship. Then I get the Elvin Jones Award. Funnily, that was cool. And then I got some other, like, I remember, like, I have at home these certificates, like the Barnes and Noble Award, like, you know, like some extra scholarship money.
Sure.
And so, and because like I mentioned, like I studied classical music in Hungary. Classical music in Hungary is very strict. It's very hard, but they prepare you very well. So when I came here, I tested out ear training, harmony, a lot of these things. Even though I didn't speak English, but I knew, you know, I could hear things. And I got transferred some credits, so I finished Berklee in 2 years. That's it. I only did 5 semesters, so 1 summer and then 4 other semesters. And immediately after, I applied to the New England Conservatory. I started my master's there. I got a full scholarship there. And then after 1 year, I applied and I got accepted to the Monk Institute, which is actually seems like a nice sequence. But in between, by the way, I applied to the Monk Institute 2 years before that, and I was not accepted.
Yeah.
So there wasn't always these ups, but even when I was not accepted, it was a great thing, because what happened that year when I was not accepted to the Monk Institute, that year was Guillermo Monteiro, Walter Smith, John Sullivan, Dan Kaufman, and Damian Reed. They got accepted, and Patrick Cornelius. And that was the first year the Monk Institute moved to Los Angeles, and after 3 months, they all quit. So if I was accepted that year, I would have not had the experience that I had. And after that was Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter and John Scofield and, you know, like Charlie Hayden and Christian McBride, all these people involved. So by the time 2 years later I got there, so it was a blessing really that they didn't accept me. And I just want to say this because so many times people get down, like they try something, it doesn't happen or didn't work out, blah, blah, blah. Think of it, it's always, you always get what you need, not necessarily what you want. And that's a great lesson in my life, because early on I understood that, and anytime now when something doesn't work out the way I thought, I'm always thinking like, okay, something bigger is coming for me.
Very true.
And it's been always like that, and that's I call the magic of life, because always things work out, and you have to go through some unpleasant things, but at the end, the reward is always there.
We get what we are ready for.
Yeah, totally.
Sometimes
100%.
it's not it's not that time yet.
Yeah.
Why don't we put a bracket on your years in Boston? Just because in this city,
Yeah.
I know it because I've been here 30 years.
Yeah.
Most students that would come outside of studying at Berklee or New England Conservatory might take private lessons with some of the other amazing musicians that are here in the
Right.
city. Why don't you list the teachers that you have had in college and
Yeah.
outside of college, just to put an academia
Yeah.
umbrella on the city of Boston, and then we'll move out of Boston to see where your actual professional career took to the very next level. Levels, plural.
So again, before I get there, one thing that I also early on realized is that if you want to accelerate faster, if you want to get to your goals faster, you want to get the best teachers, mentors, tutors, whatever that is, because they're going to help you get there faster. If you try everything by yourself, you need 5, 10, or 50 lifetimes, and we don't have, as far as I understood.
Exactly.
So when I came to Berklee, I asked Dave Samuels, Dave, who should I study with? So Dave said, all right, study with Joe Hunt. So at Berklee, my first teacher was supposed to be Joe Hunt, but Joe Hunt had an accident, so they assigned Bob Kaufman, which at the end I'm really, really grateful for, because Joe, well, I never get to study with Joe, but Bob was really into Alvin, and he still is. And I actually stayed 2 semesters with Bob because I went deep, and I wanted to learn everything about Alvin. And while I was doing that, again, I asked Dave, who else can I study with? So I wanted to get as much knowledge as possible, and I wanted to make the most out of my time here, because my original idea was that I come here for 1 or 2 semesters and I learn everything that is, and then I go back to Hungary. And then of course I realized after a month that not 1 or 2 semesters, a lifetime is not enough here, and I said, I'm never moving back to Hungary, because now I'm part of this.
Right.
So Dave said, you gotta study with Gary Chaffee. That's the person that you really need to study with. As for those of you who don't know, Steve Smith, Vinnie Colaiuta, J.R. Robinson, and actually I asked a couple of years ago, and he said, well, at this point there are thousands of students who study with him, and then those who thought his method goes to the tens of thousands. And
Absolutely.
so I ended up studying with Gary for 3 years. All my time here in Boston, I was studying with him every week. And in the meantime, I studied with Bob Moses. And in the meantime, I was also at Berklee studying with Jamie Haddad and John Ramsey. So I really was trying to, and then of course I took labs with Skip Haddon and with Bobby Sanabria, everybody who was around. And when I was at New England Conservatory, I also took private lessons with Bergonzi, Jerry Bergonzi, and John Abercrombie.
Sure.
Which was really, for me, just a very nourishing time. And until today, if I can get a lesson or if I can get together with somebody and learn something, I'm always up to it. And I always want to, expand my knowledge.
Right.
That excites me.
Yeah. It sounds like it, even from witnessing your beautiful masterclass at 24/7 Drums 2 days ago, that you are actually the eternal student.
Yeah, I hope
And
so.
that's the right attitude, right?
Yeah.
That's something that really will take you places. Yeah. Speaking of taking you places, so how did you graduate? Not in the sense of graduating from school, but your academia experience in Boston. So you do Berklee, the conservatory, the New England Conservatory, then the Monk Institute. What happens after getting out in the real world? Where did you move to?
Yeah, so I always, even when I was living in Boston, and the first time when I came here, I came with my father. He helped me settle down, and we went to New York for a couple of days before I started Berklee. And when I arrived to New York, I was like, that's it. This is the place. That's
The energy, right?
Yeah.
Something else.
I fell in love right away. So I always knew that I wanted to live in New York. So as soon as I finished the Monk Institute in 2003, I naturally moved to New York. And so luckily, as I always say to people, no matter what you do, people are gonna talk behind you and you are building your reputation, okay? Whatever you do, you don't even know, but people are talking about you and people are saying, this guy is that, or this guy is this, or whatever. So a lot of people also moved to New York from Berklee that I studied with. And because I was in the Monk Institute, there is like one person per instrument for 2 years. Like I was the only drummer for 2 years, and there's like we were 7 people. So pretty much everybody in the jazz scene in New York, they knew that I was in the Monk Institute, and they knew that I moved to New York. And in the meantime, like I said, I met at the Monk Institute with Mark Turner, Christian McBride. A lot of people came through, Louis Nash. So when I moved to New York, I contacted these people. I let everybody know that I'm here. And very quickly, I started to play gigs, clubs. I had every day pretty much a gig, mostly clubs and restaurants. So Monday night, I used to play in Soho. There was a place called Boom. And then Tuesday night, I was playing, there was a place, it still exists in the East Village, Julian's or something, Jules. I was there with Anat Cohen and Gilad Hexamon, Edward Perez, you know, that was a Tuesday night. And then I used to play Wednesdays many times in East Village, Avenue C and 9th Street. There was a place called Louis 649. I played there with a guitar player. And then Friday, Saturday, Sundays, I ended up being in this circle of the jazz restaurants in New York, the Blue Water Grill, the Bluefin, and sometimes with Daniela Schachter. Sometimes, like there were different people doing those gigs. So pretty much I was playing every day, which was great. It went on for like 2-3 years. And then I was doing small tours here and there. But then around 2006, I was like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go on the road, and I want to be on the road. I want to tour. So all of these gigs, by the way, at that time, I had to take my drums. So, you know, pull over in front of my house, double park, get a ticket many times, get my drums, put it in the car, go to the club, restaurant, come back, 2 o'clock in the night, bring back up my drums from the car, you know, and like, it was crazy every night. And so I said, that's it, I don't want to do that. I want to be on tour. So I sold my car. And I said to the people, because I couldn't quit the gigs, but I had to create a situation for myself. And that, what happened is there were like 2-3 months when I didn't really do anything almost. 1 gig here, 1 gig there. And then slowly one tour came in. And then I remember Kate McGarry was one of the first ones that gave me like a short tour, you know. And then Omer Avital, and then we started to do more and more gigs with Lionel. We were always doing gigs with Lionel, but you know, mostly I was organizing those.
Was Lionel a sideman, or he was the leader in those situations?
Well, we had this band called Gil Fema, which is the same as Lionel Lueca Trio, with the difference that Gil Fema is we brought tunes.
I see.
And I organized all the tours.
So it was
Everything.
a co-leader.
Yes. And
collective effort.
Lionel Lueca Trio was Lionel's music, and it was organized by his management and through Blue Note. And so that was 2007.
Yeah.
But up until 2007, everything that pretty much 99% what was organized was me. So
yeah, I was just considering, you know, I was thinking that for some people, school is just the road, doing it, and you just learn on the go. But I find it interesting that for you, the academia has been a great business card for you to break into the world, because you were saying that your credentials of being in the Monk Institute and
That really helped.
being part of that such small circle of musicians put you on the map, where the big guys and girls realized that you must have been great at what you were doing, and a professional, because that's a professional setting. So here is something to consider for all the viewers, that it's not the same for everybody. Some are less privileged, or maybe life will take them on the road at a very young and early age, and may not get a chance to go to college. Some others do go to college and invest wisely the time at the college to succeed and be the best and make those connections, and then break into the world. So there's not one formula that works for everybody. Yesterday, being in a great city like Boston, I was with Adam Nussbaum. He played at Scholars Jazz Club, and we were talking about how for him, there was no college. The college was like being with older musicians that just told him how it was done, and and to learn from just doing it. So your story is great, and of course, at some point, once you started gigging with all the musicians, which you ended up gigging with, we're going to talk about that, you also continued your education on the road.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And, you mentioned Adam. I did an interview with Al Foster about 6 months ago, and it was the same for him. At that time, there is no college. I mean, most people, they just play.
You interviewed Al Foster?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So we're going to share the link in the comment section.
Well,
because this is something I want to watch as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, what happened is, Al was saying, for example, that he was just practicing. He had an album of Max Roach, and all he did, played along with that album.
Mm-hmm.
And some people in the building heard, they thought he's playing with a band. They knock on the door, what are you doing? It's like, I'm playing, and then he got his first gig like that. I mean, it was a different time, different way, and then from that on, people, recommending you to other people. And one thing I always say is that we are not in the music business. People think we are in the music business. No, we are in the relationship business. If you take care of the people around you, the people will take care of you. And that is almost more important than,
Yeah, absolutely. And it also seems to me that commitment is really the common denominator. Whether you're playing along all day to a Max Roach album, or being in a school at that level and making the short list of the top musicians, or being on the road and hustling, all those three scenarios have one thing in common: the commitment, and just doing it until further developments. Which now I want to know, okay, because you played with so many names, I'll let you give a little bit of your bio of the last 15 years, making music at such a high level. But I mean, one thing led to another, but how? Give us a little roadmap to go from the New York restaurants at the jazz festivals worldwide.
Yeah, so it's basically knowing people, and people knowing you. It's an important part. So being on the scene, when I was in New York, I used to play, like I said, every night, but also after the gigs, I would go to clubs and I would hang out with the people. I would go to jam sessions and meet people, because it's all about that, getting to know everyone and people getting to know you. So the first, around 2004 maybe, was when, same way I went down, listening to Chris Cheek, in a club. I introduced myself. We started to play some sessions, and then he called me to play with his band. So that was kind of like, oh wow, like Chris was someone I really admire, and then started to play with him. We did still play with Lionel, so Lionel was always 24 years at this point, you know, like 25 years we've been playing together, and sometimes being on the road, you meet someone, and that's always like a good business card, that you are in a festival and you meet someone. It's like, hey man, like they see you that you are playing, hanging. So, you know, I would meet people either in clubs, places, or, you know, like I would go down, listen to Seamus Blake, and then Seamus had a tour, and then Seamus would call me, you know. Then on the tour was Dave Kikoski was playing piano, so Dave, you know, we had a great hookup. So then Dave called me to play with his band. I was doing this every summer. I used to go to Siena, to Italy,
Yes.
and then play with, you know, different people. So I met John Taylor there, the great piano player. So then John called me to play with his band, with Paula Danielson, you know, incredible bass player. That's where actually the first time I really started to play with Kenny Werner was there. And then, you know, we went back to New York, and I said, Kenny said, wow, I never played with Lionel. So I said, hey, let me put together a session. So we did a trio session with Kenny, Lionel, and myself. And then I really loved that. So I said, hey, Kenny, would you record on my album? And he was like, sure. So we recorded an album with Kenny, Lionel, and Joshua Redman. And then Kenny really liked that setting. So then he created a quintet with Lionel, me, of course, and Miguel Zenon, and Benjamin Koppel. So then I started to play with Kenny. Or another example, when I was in the Monk Institute, I met Mark Turner. And then I used to play with a bass player from out in California, Emmanuel Von Lee, and he got a record deal with Fresh Sound. And that was actually at that time, like still early 2000s, was like a big deal. Fresh Sound, you know, like all the Jorge Rossi, Chris Chick, Mark Turner, all Brad Meldau, all those albums came out from that. So then we ended up recording an album for Emmanuel, for Fresh Sound, with Mark Turner and this great piano player. He studied here at Berklee, also Albert Sanz. You know, so this is how, like, and then I met on a festival in 2009. I met this incredible singer and oud player. His name is Dafer Youssef. And Dafer really liked my playing, and you know, for 4 years we were talking on the phone, sending email, hey man, let's meet. We met, we talked with it, and after 4 years, finally there was an opportunity, and then he hired me with his band, and we, you know, that's where I played with Aaron Parks and Matt Brewer in that band. And then in the meantime, you know, I met through Wayne Shorter. So Wayne Shorter was at the Monk Institute, coming in, teaching us from time to time. And we would go to his gigs. And, you know, I hang out with Brian Blade, Patitucci, Danilo. We really, you know, hook up. And in 2003, I had a gig where we had an opportunity to invite John. So Patitucci was playing with us, right? This is like a band from Hungary. And really, we hooked up, and I asked John, hey, if I ever record an album, would you play on it? And he said, sure, man, give me a call. And I was like, okay. So when I recorded my first album, so I had John Patitucci.
Sure.
As I mentioned, I met Chris Cheek in the gigs. I was already playing in his band, so I asked him. I already recorded with Mark Turner. I toured with him, you know. I asked him to play, and then Lionel Lueke, that was my buddy, and Aaron Parks, because I knew Aaron from Terence Blanchard's band, because we used to see Terence playing. We did like a double bill with Terence for like a week, you know, and I knew Terence from the Monk Institute. So all of these things, just very, you know, like, you know, one person, this calls another person, and of course Dave Samuels, he was like a close friend of mine. I play in his band, and, you know, just one thing would always lead to another one.
Yeah.
You know.
To me, it sounds like, as I'm hearing this, it sounds like a virus, except it's a positive virus, right? You enter a room, whether it's a recording studio or a stage, and you get in contact with some people, and they get some of what you have, and you get some of what they have, and then it's there with you, right? You catch this virus, a positive virus, and now all of a sudden you know who to call when you need someone. I mean, it sounds like your first album was already with stellar musicians.
I mean,
It was an easier target to get them because you already knew them. You had already made that connection instead of calling an agent and go like, can I hire this artist of yours? Because, you know, with money, it's probably possible to do so. But one thing is the people already knew you. They knew your level, your talent, your commitment again on how you would handle the business.
Yeah, that's a big difference when you just, because with money, you can just call pretty much anyone and they say yes, no, it's a question, you know, but if you have a lot of money, everybody says yes. But it's a very different approach when you know people. And yes, I was a little bit nervous to call Patitucci, but in the same time, he already said, yeah, I would do that. So it's kind of like, you know, when I called him, I remember I was outside, I was playing a gig in East Village, and I decided I'm gonna record my album. So I said the first person I called was John. So I went, you know, I was outside, it was like in the fall, and I was a little bit nervous. I was like, I'm gonna call, and I called John, you know, like, hey John, remember me? You know, we played whatever not too long ago. He's like, yeah man, yeah. You know, he picked up the phone. That's already a big plus. And
thought it was a gig.
Yeah, you know.
It was.
And I asked, and I'm not gonna say the number, but he did that recording for a very like absolutely minimal fee, which was like so generous, you know, because I mean at that point, 2004, when we recorded the album, he had already played with everyone.
Sure.
I mean, there is no absolutely name that he wasn't, and it was a natural step. The same why I called Joshua Redman on my second album. A few years before, we were at and that's why I say people see you in festivals here and there. We were playing at the North Sea Jazz Festival, and in the lobby in the hotel, we ran into each other, and we knew of each other because we met in different places. And so Josh was really nice, man, great to see you, like, and he was like saying we should do something together. And you know, maybe he was just saying that out of politeness, maybe he meant it, but we changed numbers, we changed emails. And so when a couple of years later, when I called him to do the album, it wasn't even a question. It's like, tell me the date. And that's it. And we didn't even talk about money until the recording was coming up. And again, I'm so thankful and grateful for all of these people, because the money they asked was like very generous, like minimal. And so, yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, it's really, to me, it's inspiring to witnessing someone, and I relate because I also came from Europe, and it was much harder at the time to make the overseas trip.
Yeah.
I mean, even filling the applications and faxes.
There was no internet,
long distance calls where they put you on hold, and it's like, I was working on cruise ships at the time, so I would call Berklee just to know if they received my whatever document they needed, and I'm holding for 10 minutes at $3 a minute.
Yeah.
In 93.
And the exchange rate between the lira and in Italy. Yeah.
That was the only time I was a millionaire, because I had millions of liras.
Exactly.
Translated in dollars, it wasn't much. Yeah. So your your yesterday is very rich, and let's talk about today. In fact, you came to Boston. You were doing a few live dates, and I'm grateful that you called me and said, "Can we do an educational event?" Which we did.
Yeah,
that was incredible. We, you and I met through a student that we had in common, and as soon as I went on your social media, I started following you, which I encourage all the viewers to do so. We're gonna, of course, include the links in the comment section, but. FERENC as a very creative way, and positive, to me that's very important, there's a lot of negativity on social media as far as lecturing people or telling people what not to do.
Schooling people.
Schooling people, yeah. But there is, even in schooling people, there is the positive way of doing it,
That's right.
leading by the example, or just uplifting people to tell, look, you can do it as well, because I did. And so I really love what you do on social media. You also involve the community to be interactive. You know, the first people that will comment on this will get together with me, or are you up for a one-on-one consultation? Hit me up. So to me, it's not about you necessarily, but it's about what you bring to the table. Just like you did in the master class at my shop. We had a few Berklee students, and they will all remember, including myself. You know, sometimes there could be one idea, one concept that will change your mind frame or your approach. So where are you at today? What's cooking? I mean, you're a busy guy.
Yeah, well,
If you were spreading your virus, your positive virus, and you were catching the virus from the people you were in contact with, I can only imagine now, after all your years of touring and recording, that you can be as busy as you want, right? You're probably now at a stage in life, like most, where you got to make choices.
yes,
It's like, where do I want to be?
yeah.
Where am I now, and where do I want to be? Which will lead to the end of the interview, where we'll talk about the
Future,
tomorrow part.
yes.
But where are you today?
So right now, and this is again a very interesting thing. So where I'm at right now is where, you know, the conclusion of everything I did before. And before, the most important thing in my life was always my career and the music, and make the best out of it, which I did. And fortunately, because I did, I arrived to the point where now I have 2 kids, 2.5 years old and 1 year old. And at this moment, I really want to spend time with them.
Right.
And for 2 reasons. One, my father was never really around when I was a kid, and I really missed him. And I want that my kids to feel that I'm, at least at the beginning of their, you know, growing up, I'm there. So I'm doing everything to, yes, of course I miss music, and I'm doing music, but I organize my life that I can stay home and I don't feel guilty about it. So many musicians, they stay home but they want to be on the road, or they have to be on the road financially. And other musicians, they don't have a choice, so they are on the road and their family suffers. So right now, I'm taking about a week or maybe 10 days out of a month on the road, and the other 20 or 23 days I'm home.
Right.
So the way it works is, I mentioned earlier, in 2015 was a big decision for me when I switched from being a sideman to be a band leader. And with that comes that I have choices. When do I want to work? How much do I want to do? Blah, blah, blah. I did that, and since the kids were born, 2 things happened. One, I'm not organizing still much for my band, but the things I do is really high level or really worth it, something that I really want. And 2, I took the last 2.5 years more sideman gigs, because that just comes in. And I don't have to organize with my band, you know, hotels, travels, people, deal with music, all that. So I took the easy road. And when my son was born 2.5 years ago, they came, both my wife and my son came to all the tours with me, because I did not want to stay without them. And when my daughter was born last September, long story short, she had a autoimmune disease, but she's fine now, so she's okay, but they couldn't travel. So since that time, you know, she was born in September, I took August, September, and October off, no work at all. November, I took 2 short tours, 1 week and 1 week. December, I only took 1 gig. And then from that on, since January of this year, like I said, maybe a week or 10 days maximum out of a month. And I'm also teaching online from home, which is great because, you know, I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, how much ever I want, and I can stay home, but I still do the music. But that's my, like, the way I said before, the career was the most important thing, and I could never imagine that anything can interfere with that. Now it's kind of like my family is the most important thing. And it's almost difficult to say, but that's the truth. I talk to people and I realize, like, that's the truth. And music is still what I do, and legacy is very important for me. But when I take a tour, I say to it's not like before, a tour came in and I just did it. I sit down and I say to my wife, what do you think? Can I do it? Should I do it? Like, I have this opportunity, and my wife is incredible, supports me in everything, and, you know, whatever. So we have, of course, a great thing going on, but I'm also, you know, like, I know, and I'm practicing, I'm, you know, working on things, and also, as you know, educating, it's just reinforming and learning still. While you are educating, when you are teaching, you learn more. So that's
absolutely. I guess it comes handy to be a teacher, diversify the portfolio so that perhaps you can afford to be home and still have some stream of income instead of being forced being on the road, like you were saying some people have to.
But you know, this is also an interesting thing. I never thought about myself. I always consider myself as a performer, touring, but I was always teaching, like, since I was 18 years old. Like, maybe one lesson here, one masterclass here, like, sparsely, but, you know, like, always doing. And just the last couple of months, randomly, 2-3 people that I thought 25, 30 years ago, like, somebody that I gave a lesson while I was at Berklee, I have no memory. You know, someone that I was teaching before, they somehow contacted to me, someone I was teaching in LA. Honestly, I told them, man, I don't remember you. What did you learn from me? And he's like, man, that lesson was incredible. Like, I did this and this and this. So even though I was not considering myself an educator, I was always teaching, and it was always part of my life. But since COVID, when COVID happened, I felt there was a call. And what I felt, that I was home, and I felt, wow, life, I had friends I lost my age, older people, and I realized, wow, this knowledge that I have, the same as your knowledge, it's only yours, because the people I study with, it's only I study with those people. What I learn from them, I learn, because other people learn other things, other interests, right? So what you learn, what you study, it's all yours. And I felt a call. I said, I have to share this with people. So as you know, during COVID, I went online for 500 days straight. And every day I would share what I'm practicing. And that's how it really started what I'm doing right now, which I have this coaching program. And what I did is every day I would go online for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half and just show people. And I was super nervous the first time I did it. I have the video, the first video is like, hi everyone, this is Frank. You know, like super shy and super.
Yeah.
But I felt that what I have to say resonates with some people. And out of that, I created this coaching program, but I also share. I want to share, because I feel people need to get access to free lessons, free content, and people who really are serious, just like I was when I studied with Gary Chaffee. Well, I have a paid program where they can get the experience I have for the last 25 or 30 years.
Right.
And so this is when my really focused educator part kicked in.
Curious, I have a question for you. How much in percentage would you say that the teachings you have received from such wonderful list of educators you studied with, really the who is who of drumming. How much in percentage is what you learned from them and passing it on to your generation of students versus your actual experience and program, and maybe combining what you learned with your own take on it. I guess all of it would be your interpretation, but specifically when it comes to hands down, this is how we do that. How often and in which percentage would you tap into what Gary Chaffee or Bob Moses taught you versus this is how I do it based on what I learned on the road doing it myself?
I would say it's equally important. It's 50-50. And I tell you why. Because you can practice something and get to an experience and figure it out by yourself, and that's one thing. But on the other hand, like when Bob Moses said, like, okay, learn how to swing just on one limb. So I had to play just like I would play on the right cymbal, but on the bass drum or on the hi-hat. And if you can do that, then it's in a different part of your body, right? So he had to give me that, but I had to experience and learn it. So it's equally important, because someone can give you an idea, but if you don't go through the route and figure it out for yourself, that's not gonna be enough. In the same time, I could have come to that conclusion that I need to get to this. Maybe I would have come to that conclusion, maybe I wouldn't. Maybe it would take me 1 year or 10. So chances, and the same thing with Gary Chaffee, the systems, the structures, same thing, Peter Erskine, the energy, the flow. Like I would play, first lesson with Peter, I sit down, I start to play, and I'm playing like this, and then I'm playing like this. My hands are moving, right? So Peter would just come next to me and then push my hand, like close my hands like this. I was looking at him like, he's like, why your hands are moving all over? So, I don't know. So it's like, don't do it then. It's like taking away the energy from focusing on the music. This is too much. If it's not necessary, I was doing it because I think I saw Jeff Tain was doing that, to be honest. And many of these things, when I studied with Joe LaBarbera, we were trading eights. So he would pass me ideas that, Philly Joe would have, or Max, but just coming through him, his experience, and then give me an idea. It's very different than just listening to an album and coming to that conclusion. So it's at least, you have to get an idea, you have to get some kind of guidance, but you have to go through your route.
I agree, and I understand, and I think the enthusiasm of delivering that to our students comes from us having grabbed that information, see how it worked for us. Now we're a testament of, look, I got it from that person. It works for me, and I want to share it with you. Whereas if it's only a piece of information, but you don't have any data, you could still say, well, it's going to be valuable because I got it from Gary Chaffee. But if you have the enthusiasm to say, look, this really changed my life, this one idea, and this is what I did with that idea, now I'm going to give it to you. Students usually read into that emotion, into that delivery, receiving the message with such authority in a positive way.
Exactly. So that's another thing, that when you figure out things by yourself, you are like, I did that, you are kind of sure. But when an idea is coming from a source, especially someone older, like someone, like a wiser, whatever person, your confidence and what you do, and they are confirming because you're taking lessons with them, and you are like, I also studied with Terry Lynn Carrington, she's in Berklee. So all of those things, when you are playing, it gives you authority that, oh, this is not just some ideas I think they're good. These are actually things that I got from people and they confirm it.
Right.
And then when you are passing it, you are not just saying like, try this, see if it works. No, you're saying like, this works. Try it if it works for you, but it works. So it's not kind of a guessing game like, you know, like, should I put a little bit more salt to the soup or no? I know this is how much, and if you want to experience, putting more to see, but you are not hesitant, and this is a super important thing. When you sit down to the drums, people always focus, or any instrument, people focus on their weaknesses. You know, especially when you play with a better musician, and that energy comes through, and that person is going to notice your weaknesses. But if you focus on your strengths and forget about your weaknesses, I mean, is that important what you don't know? There are way more things that you don't know. There are absolutely infinite amount of things that you don't know. Focus on what you do know and just play that, okay? And when you do that, the person is going to receive that, and now you're gonna have a good time. Because you can't, there's no way you can please everybody, and you can't change the way you play, but you can play what you know with a confidence, not because, and that's again a misunderstanding. Like even my mom, like someone asked me like, hey, can you do this recording or this show? And you know, if I feel like, I say, oh yeah, of course. And I remember my mom said like, wow, you are a little bit like arrogant. You just say yes to this gig or to that thing. And I said, no. The difference between arrogance or confidence is that I know what I know and what I'm capable of. And I've been working on these 10 hours a day for 30 years. So the same way, if I ask you to brush your teeth in front of me, you're gonna be like, yes. I mean, there is no absolute doubt. You are not arrogant. You just know, I do that. I can, you know, tie my shoelaces, no problem, right? So this is the same kind of things, but you need that experience and you need to work on that. But most people focus on what they don't know, and then when they play with some great musician, they really focus on like, oh, is he gonna notice that I don't know the double triplets, whatever, you know, it's like, who cares?
Right.
Nobody cares about what you don't know.
Right,
yeah. You want to stand there and just play what you can play.
Yeah.
Deliver that, and that's that. End of the day.
Be yourself. Everybody else is taken, and deliver your best.
And you are the best at what you do. Nobody can do what you do.
Absolutely.
You are the best at it.
Absolutely.
And when you go to the practice room, yes, work on the thing. I'm working on things that I don't know. I'm not working on the things that I do know, because that's kind of a waste. You know?
Yeah. Well, you know, this brings to a good point. I remember when I was a student, it probably happened to you because you studied with so many teachers, and then you know, at the master class, you were also talking about transcribing and really getting all the language from the masters down. To me, when I was in school, in the first years of getting out in the real world, I had a little bit of this identity crisis. Like, go to a gig and go like, who do I try to sound like? Do I want to be more like Elvin or Roy or Jack? And it took me really a long time to, first of all, realize that trying to sound like those guys was not going to happen. But eventually to just, you know, be yourself, develop your own style and so forth. How was it for you when you had all of that knowledge in you? Now you go to a gig and you go like, how do I approach this? Because, you know, even playing, whether it's fusion or jazz, you could go, you play a fusion gig, you could be a Dennis Chambers type guy, or a Dave Weckl type guy, or a Vinnie Collie. Those are three different approaches. How was it for you?
So,
or how still is, because we still go through that, right?
Definitely. So when I was studying, I didn't want to get into that, like I knew so many people who got into one person's styles and they sounded like Vinnie Colaiuta. And that's what they did. or they sounded like Jack DeJohnette, and then that's what they did. And I think it's important to learn the language of everybody. I studied everybody, and definitely I had periods when I would play more like Elvin or more like Tony. You know, like I have recordings when I'm playing with the band, and you know, but that when I was in school, because I, you know, like I said, I spent a year on pretty much only listening and emulating Elvin's playing when I studied with Bob Kaufman. So naturally, when I went to a gig, that's what I heard, because that's what I was listening only. You know, I was really just like fanatic, and I would not listen to anything else. I remember, like, you know, someone showed me Max or Philly, I was like, I'm not even listening. You know, and then I would get into Max, and then that's all I would listen to.
Yeah.
So, but I had that, like, short periods of that, but then I also had, I remember these moments when I could not listen to Jack DeJohnette anymore. I could not, so for years, I would not, deliberately not listen to Tony, not listen to anything Elvin, not listen to Jack. If I heard it, I just turned it off. And so, but one thing, I never wanted to sound like any one of them. But I do want to play all that information that I got from them. And so I always focused on the music and try to play what the music needs.
Yeah.
And that, you know, and I feel like until today, you know, while I would, you know, practice and learn things from Dave Veckel or Vinny, or, you know, but when it came to play like a fusion groove, you know, I would always feel like if I'm playing this fusion groove, it's too tight for me to play like Vinny, you know. I can't do it like that. My feel to do that, it would be Vinny with a twist of Elvin, you know. Or if I play a jazz gig, I can't play like Elvin. That's too loose, you know, like I need a little bit more control. So anytime I play any gig, all of those influences would come up, and I would I would hear people, but I would not.
Yeah.
I would always get away to sound exactly like someone, and you know, just listen to what the music needs, and really, if it's a kind of feel that Elvin has, I wouldn't be afraid to do, but I wouldn't play a song like that. Maybe like it would be a bar or a half bar or a, you know, like, or a feel of like, oh, this is a swing, this kind of like a feel of Elvin. So maybe my ride would try to be similar to that, but anything else, you know, it would just like, I would always feel comfortable playing the way I can play.
Yeah.
And when I was trying to push to sound like someone else, it would just not feel natural, and it would be always weird. So that's how
It makes sense, and I really love what you said as far as, well, the music will really tell you what to play eventually, because even the masters, you know, on different recording sessions, although you can still hear their style, but they're going to adapt on how the bass player is playing in comparison to where the, you know, the beat is, but how are we phrasing this and shaping this? So,
but you know, in my practice room, and I have recordings, you know, on the phone, that I would put a record and I would try to match exactly. And I have recordings of me playing with Elvin, and you can hear I'm playing an Elvin, but you know, there's like almost there, but you know, so I try that definitely. But as soon as I go to a gig, I would not do that. You know.
Yeah. One thing that stayed with me from your master class was taking a 2-bar phrase or a 4-bar phrase from a recording and really loop it and do it over and over. And my question is, while you were in Boston, did you ever get to know Lenny Nelson?
No, I didn't.
You don't know Lenny Nelson?
I know his name. Yeah.
Okay, so Lenny Nelson lives in Boston.
Yeah, I never met him.
He's 80 or 81 now.
Yeah.
And he's a real treasure. And he made over 3,000 or 4,000 tapes. This guy would go to his practice room He was Chick Corea's first drummer, by the way. Then he had some health complications, and he ended up working for the MBTA, driving a bus, then selling tokens when the subway, you know.
I
you needed to buy a
remember the
token.
T. Yeah.
He was at the Mass Ave stop. And when I was a Berklee student, I used to go there and take my oral drum lessons from him, just singing rhythms. And it's interesting because his tapes are actually analyzing the masters. He would put a recording on, Max Roach, Elvin Jones, Philly Joe Jones. He'd push play and stop after 2 bars. His ears were incredible. He would play what he heard, but then develop it and take it uptown in his own words, and then take it. He did some tapes where it's like, well, what about if Buddy Rich played Roy Haynes? What about if Roy Haynes played Elvin? And so when you said that at your master class, I thought, well, maybe FERENC, while in Boston, met and got to know Lenny Nelson. But the next time you're here, we're gonna get Lenny.
Great.
He loves this place. Yeah.
I heard about him. I know his name.
Oh, he would love to connect with you, and his wisdom is incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he would. But in the meanwhile, go on YouTube, Lenny Nelson 25.
Oh, great.
Because he was the 25th born. Everybody should check out Lenny Nelson. He's truly a master. And Dennis Chambers has some of these tapes. Jeff Watts, on a Modern Drummer interview, said, if you're serious about jazz, you should get in touch with Lenny Nelson. So you're in Boston because of all the academia. You heard so many names that it might take me a week to transcribe and put all that stuff in the comment box of this interview. But it's really history for you guys to check out. And now that we covered so much history, what I want to know in closing this interview, take all the time you need, but the purpose here of the yesterday, today, and tomorrow is really to lead into what do you think, first of all, how do you envision your career in the next, you're still young, you're not even 50, so how do you envision your career in the next 10, 20 years? But also, the industry is changing, we know that, there's been changes. How do you see the music tomorrow? How do you see yourself, and then do you foresee any changes?
Yeah, so definitely for my personal career, I'm now, again, the kids are growing, so I'm gonna go back more to play with my bands. And for a couple of reasons. One is I have more control, what gigs, when I want to play, and what music and who do I want to play with. Which is, I really love, calling now the next tour next month is going to be with Rick Margitza, for example. When I played the last year was Seamus Blake and Gilad Hexamon, and before was Lionel Huaker and Chris Potter and Chris Cheek, and I just found it a tape. We were a couple of years ago. We were doing a trio also with Chris Potter and escaping his name. Okay, I will get back. Anyway, so the choices are much better, and I can do what I really.
More virus has been spread.
Yeah, and with people, because different people bring different energy and different kind of excitement to the band. So that's what I want to get to. That's my personal journey, and of course teaching. So I want to keep doing that because that is really exciting, and I'm learning more. It forces me to stay on top of my game as far as like developing myself, because I see my students, I'm like, wow, I need to move forward. But what I see where the music goes, that's kind of like really broad. So I'm really in jazz, right? And what I see, jazz has become this thing where a lot of people went into this very, very mathematical, very kind of like things where it's like very divided, and before in the 90s when I started to listen to jazz, nobody played odd meter. Now if you don't play like 5, 7, 9, you are not even on the scene, so it's like so much part of it. So I see that more, and even more like Tigran, a lot of like Dafer Youssef that I play with, it's like getting into the 13, 15, 27, 39, like these bigger things. So what I see in jazz is more and more influenced by different cultures, influenced by different type of music. And of course I do see a lot of jazz that gets into the more, in a sense, like commercial, like a lot of musicians, especially my age, they are like, they want to have more recognition, so they do some albums that is more accessible to the people, which is, you know, like Miles did the same, Herbie did. I mean, Herbie did rock it when he was, you know, in the 70s, like, so that's totally fine. So I see a lot of that. Robert Glasper is doing this R&B and jazz. So I see in Europe, you know, most of my tours, even though I play the musicians from the States, but it's all the tours are in Europe, right? So all these festivals, I see a lot of people, European people, trying to play this R&B jazz, and you are like, okay, whatever. So it has a huge influence. And in the same time, I see a lot of folk elements, people from Eastern Europe or people from India, people from other parts, Africa, of course, you know, Brazil. So a lot of people putting that into jazz, and a lot of things like COVID brought us, where people would do either play a whole album by themselves, like Chris Potter recorded with, you know, himself. He did a whole orchestra,
Layers
the last album, yeah,
overdubs.
or you know, Nate Smith, Nate Wood. I'm sorry, Nate Wood, that play guitar, bass, and drums and keyboards and everything. So I see a lot of that, and then you see kind of like bringing back some fusion tradition, like JD and Yomi. What's her name? I'm sorry, the duo. You know, JD and
Can't think of the name now.
that girl. I'm sorry, I'm spacing out.
We'll put it in
Yeah.
once it's on. I'll overlay it on the video.
So they would bring in, you know, Weather Report song, and then they do their own way with like this kind of, you know, like very fast and very. So I see that a lot of jazz goes into that direction of like playing these super fast, broken kind of rhythms that is influenced kind of like by. And I say fusion because it's definitely, even if they are aware or not, it's coming from the Steve Gadd drumming, but put that Steve Gadd phrasings on speed, and then you would get to where you get. But it's not drum and bass, so it's not that kind of thing.
No, it's true. We did slow down some Nate Smith grooves with my students, and it's Steve Gadd vocabulary from the 70s, but really sped up, and I mean, it sounds amazing. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. And to your point, so what you described, you know, the odd meters and the music almost done at the arranging table instead of in the room. Let's take a standard and see what happens. But a lot of times, you know, I went to the Newport Jazz Festival, which is a good thermometer, you know, as an indicator of what the trends are. 2 summers ago, I think on day one, there was not one song in 4/4. And that made me thinking, you know, I call it a little more music for musicians instead of for the audiences. Do you think this poses a risk for jazz musicians to go too much on that and leave out mainstream music, where some musicians, like when Miles Davis did the album You Are Under Arrest, you know, and he recorded Human Nature and Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper, Human Nature, Michael Jackson. He almost left us with a message. Take a pop song, jazz it up, and get new audiences in. I mean, he had done that back in the days with, you know, Autumn Leaves or Stella by Starlight. Those were popular songs. What are the risks, if there are any risks, in your opinion, for the jazz scene now, where people are pushing too much the envelope of experimenting and leaving out the civilians, I call them that way, that go to a show to snap their fingers on 2 and 4 and have a good time. Feel a little bit of a blues and snap their fingers and go like, it's jazzy, but I still understand it. What do you think of that?
I think there's always going to be a variety. There's going to be people who go too far down on that mathematical road, and then there are going to be people who still, Benny Green is still playing straight ahead, you know? So it's always gonna be there. And then some people in between that experimenting with the things. I wouldn't worry about that everybody gonna go down one road, because there is no way.
Yeah.
There's no way. We are so different humans,
Right.
feelings, what influences us, what we love, what we don't love. I feel like this is just, yeah, there's going to be big waves and then other waves, but there's going to be things like, even though it's interesting to listen to some of these really complex things, but I know I don't want to play that. And I know many people who wouldn't want to play that. But I also, as much as I love Charlie Parker and Ben Webster, I don't want to play just like that kind of music. So just like me, I'm sure there are millions of other people who feel the same, but we let ourselves influenced by these little things. So the music I write might be a little bit influenced by some of these broken things, or maybe a jazz standard. Like one of the last songs I wrote, it's based on Tune Up,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a ballad. So
Yeah.
it's, has nothing to do with anything, and that's how I feel. Even though I listen to this, that's what came out. So just because there is a trend, I'm not gonna go down on that road.
Yeah.
I still, and I know a lot of people who going to do that. By the way, I just remember, I'm so bad, Craig Taborn was the other piano player that I played with Chris Potter. So I just, bracket, because I didn't remember his name and I feel bad about that. And no disrespect to Craig, I'm sorry. so there was, so again, just the different people that bring in different energy and inspire you in different ways.
Yeah. Well, one last question, because it is 2024 and AI is here with us, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to affect jazz musicians in a very, very small or no percentage at all compared to people that are in the music business or other businesses where the technology could really shape up things differently. But what do you think of AI? And do you think it can have any positive or any impact on what you do, on what jazz musicians do?
So this is not the first time I hear this question. People ask me this. And the truth is, AI is definitely here, and it's not going to go away, and it's going to be part of anything and everything, music and any part of life. So the only thing we can do is we learn to work with it, just the same way as the synthesizers. They are part of it, and that's that, right? So people can deny, I want to be a traditionalist, I only play classical, or I only play, acoustic instrument, blah, blah, blah. It's part of it. And AI, I think if it used right, can be a really good help in whether you need an advice. I was just talking to somebody, not a musician, just a friend who has nothing, he's a teacher, in a school, nothing to do with music, but he was saying that with his friend, they asked ChatGPT about a problem that somebody had with his wife. It's like, describe the problem, and the ChatGPT gave like a really good advice, just like a therapist would. I couldn't believe. He's like, man, it's really really incredible. So people already doing that. I'm saying that it's already part. It's not like it's not gonna stop.
Yeah.
And in music, there are these apps. I think one called it's not a download. You can just add your email, something like Audio or something. I don't know. And you give an instruction. You say, write a jazz ballad based on Autumn Leaves, and then within a minute, you have like a song.
Yeah.
So while us, I think we're not gonna use that, but maybe people are gonna use that for ideas. It's like, oh, that's an idea.
Educational, instructional, play along
educational,
material.
play along, but also to like you have to write something, and it's like, oh, you get an idea, maybe it can help you, maybe not. I haven't really explored. I just use it for making like funny songs with you can put these people's name in it and create a sad blues,
Sure.
based on the story. So it's a funny
You
thing.
can surprise someone on a birthday, right? With
Exactly, you can
music
do that. Yeah.
with a theme.
So it's a funny thing, but as I'm sure, as I'm playing with it, there are other people who are using. Now the thing is, I don't know in other areas, pop, rock, whatever music, but in jazz, I think it's still people feel so important about being the composer of their own music and not just cheat their way through. Like I feel that there are other fields that people more want to just be famous.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that us jazz musicians, what we care more about is not the fame, is that who we play with.
Right.
And so that you cannot cheat through, right? And so because you want to play with Herbie Hancock because he's famous, but if you don't have the skills and the things, it's not gonna happen, right? But in pop music, we know a lot of people who are, hey, not so talented, but they have the image, they have the team, they have this blah blah blah, and then they make a great career. And so in that sense, I can see, people using AI, music AI for that. But for us jazz musicians, one of our things, like when I'm writing songs for my album, I'm proud and happy because I wrote those songs, and I don't think people would use AI to write songs or help, because then you would feel like, well, it's not really my legacy. What am I doing?
Yeah.
It's like Bach is Bach because he wrote those songs, and if not, it would be a fraud, right? So I think in jazz particularly, is not going to be a major influence in the sense that writing music or creating songs and definitely not live, situations. Other type of music, I do see that people want to make money. Like I forgot who is this guy in Sweden that was created thousands of songs with AI and just put it on Spotify, and he became a millionaire. And then now I think he was sued and blah blah blah, and they took out all his songs.
Yeah.
So it's a commercial guy. I can see that it's already happening.
Yeah.
It's been done.
Yeah.
In other fields, not so much in jazz.
Yeah. And also in jazz, especially in modern jazz, the melody becomes more the vehicle to stretch and improvise. So unfortunately, sometimes, I feel like the melody's a little neglected and people launch into 20 choruses of improvisation, getting really away from the melody.
Yeah.
But to your point, it's not just the melody that is going to sell, but it's going to be the whole product, including the improvisation, the orchestration, how you do it, especially live.
Yeah.
So, well, FERENC, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And, the tomorrow we don't know, but it seems like it's going to be very bright for you based on how focused and dedicated and committed you were in the past. I am so delighted that you were my first guest
Thank you.
on this new show. I'm not new to interview people, but I really wanted to start this yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and I'm glad we got it done here at the Symbol Boutique in Boston. So I wish you all the best and to be continued.
Thank you for having me. This is really an awesome. I want to congratulate you for creating this and all the other educational programs that you've created, and I think this is really beautiful. It's really important, and we really need people like you. So thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
All the best to all of you.
Subscribe, stay tuned. There will be more.